Ladies and people who also have a podcast, which is none of you, it's only me, Andy here. I went from depressed and suicidal to living a life of abundance and joy, and this is my girlfriend as well. This is the Kill Your Gonna Loser show. Let's fucking go. Hi.
Hi.
Am I taking up all the room?
You don't know if they have a podcast or not.
They will have a podcast. Also, we got the hats to the side, representative of the 90s.
We actually
God
saw
bless.
that the other day. Like, remember we saw somebody?
With the hat sideways, yeah. That's how you know time travel is real, ladies and gentlemen. When you see a gentleman with his hat to the side, that's how you know there's time travel. So, very serious podcast today. That's why I'm in a very serious mood.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about the best relationship that my mother ever gave me, which is that you won't always like each other.
Best relationship advice that your mother
What did I say?
You said the best relationship that your mother ever
The best relationship my mother ever gave me was the mother-son relationship that she bestowed upon me, which was a beautiful relationship.
I kind of hope that was one of the only relationships.
Yeah. The other relationship was a good friendship. She friend-zoned me about 7 years into my childhood. She was just like, I can't fucking do this anymore. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I'm not feeding you. I'm not raising you. I'll be friends with you, but I'm not going to do any more than that.
Did she?
Yep.
Wow.
You can text her. Ask her. So,
yeah?
The best relationship advice that my mother ever gave me,
Mm-hmm.
and I did ask her, I sat her down. I said, listen, you old bag, you lovely old lady, give me the best relationship advice that you can give me. And she said, you won't always like each other, and that's perfectly okay.
Mm.
Your job isn't to like each other. Your job is to love each other.
And there have been lots of times where we haven't liked each other.
Oh, for sure. Plenty of times.
And I think for me, this being my first relationship, at first it was very alarming when there were points where I really disliked you.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like, something's wrong. Does this mean that we're going to break up soon?
Mm-hmm.
I don't love my partner. Like, am I incapable of being in relationships? There was like lots of feelings of concern and alarm when I didn't particularly like you at certain points in time. But you having spoken to you about it and then you telling me that advice definitely helped.
Yep, telling you that it's normal, that it's expected, that at times in a relationship, especially in the early stages, I think maybe a lot more in the early stages, there are times where you don't like each other. And I guess let's clarify that.
Sure.
It's that you still deeply love each other,
Mm-hmm.
you have respect for each other, you care about each other, but maybe you're just frustrated with something that person did. And that's usually because you had expectations. And we're going to talk about this in a second. When you don't like someone else, or when you don't, especially your partner, and we're not talking about any deal breakers like they cheat on you or they punch you in the face or, you know, they say they don't love you anymore, something like that. Outside of that, we're just talking about the general week-to-week stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get frustrated with your partner. Maybe they've been a little bit depressed for the last couple of weeks and, you know, you think, God, will you just like hurry up and get over it? Or maybe they have a different opinion or value to you. And we're not talking about a big deal breaker one, but just something small. Like if you're living together, she doesn't care if the kitchen is clean and you do care. Like little stuff like that. Frustrations that can come up in a relationship. It's empowering to realize, or I think it's very helpful to realize, you know, as I had my mother's wisdom in my head and I gave to you, it's okay if there's moments where you're a little bit frustrated at each other. We will give advice on what to do in those moments, but let's start with the very foundation of it's okay if sometimes you're a little bit annoyed at the other person. That's completely normal. It's like you said, it's not anything to freak out about. And again, we're not talking about big deal breakers. We're not talking about like, I literally don't love you anymore. I don't have any feelings for you. You know, I don't want to be with you. That's separate. But just the day-to-day or it's more like the week-to-week, month-to-month frustrations that can come up.
Yeah, and I think if you are spending the amount of time that you spend with your partner, with anybody else, it's got nothing to do with your actual partner. If you spend that many hours with anybody else, at some point they're going to frustrate you. It's kind of just like when you're growing up living with your parents, like your family annoys you from time to time, even if you love them, even if you care about them. Just by the nature of being around someone quite often, there's going to be times when they're going to do something to annoy you, when you're going to be in a bad mood, and there's not going to be intense feelings of like love or adoration.
And let's go into why. Let's make something really clear here. There will be moments, or there might be moments of frustration and not necessarily liking the other person. In those moments, whose shit to deal with it? If I don't like you, is that your fault or is that my responsibility?
No, if you're the one feeling the ill feelings, your feelings are your responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. And so one thing that's really helped us in those moments is like to just say, hey, listen, I'm feeling frustrated right now. We, even in the early stages of the relationship for the first couple of years, we don't really say it much anymore. But we used to say, listen, I love you, but I don't really like you right now. I've just got some stories in my head or like I just need a bit of space. I love you very much. I just got my own shit to deal with. We would always say that. We would say, listen, I need some space right now. I'm really angry. I need some space. And that's not about blame. It's not like, oh, hey, you've pissed me off. Nobody can piss you off without your consent, or it's because, maybe consent isn't the right word. You have stories going on in your own head. If you frustrate me, it's because you didn't do what I wanted you to do. But why should you do what I want you to do? You're your own person. So, we've got separate podcasts on that kind of stuff. But I think just saying in the kindest possible way that you can, even when you're angry, look, I just need some space right now. It's not you. I just need some space right now. I'm pissed off or I'm annoyed or I have this story. And at this point, we don't really do that anymore. It's if we ask for space, we will like literally say what the reason is. We're really good at this point because we understand each other and we trust each other. We've been together for 5 years. And it's not just that we've been together for 5 years. We've spent every single second of that time building communication and becoming more honest and working through stuff. But yeah, in the early couple of years, definitely. There are a lot of times where we were like, look, I'm really annoyed right now. Or another way that we would phrase it is, I don't have much to give right now. Look, I don't have much to give you right now. I don't. I'm on the edge of just exploding or I'm really angry. I need some space. And it takes a bit of practice to be able to say, okay, fine, go have your space. Because in the first couple of years, maybe the first year or two, there are times where you or I, both of us, would take that as like a rejection. Or like you'd get defensive.
Yeah, or feel deeply hurt.
Yeah,
like
why do you need space? I didn't do anything. Like, why are you pissed off at me?
Yeah, it was like a fear of being disliked by the other person.
Yeah. And so this isn't something that you have to be good at. But it is definitely helpful to say, I need some space.
Yeah, and as you said, this is definitely something that comes up a lot at the start. Maybe once you're past like the honeymoon phase where everything like feels super emotional and charged and you just like that. Once you're past the stage of infatuation,
I think it's on top of that, it's that you've built some honesty and trust. You've built deep trust after a couple of years.
Yeah. And also at the start, I think you're, I guess, getting to know the other person's quirks and habits and how they deal with certain things. And so new stuff is going to come up and that's going to surprise you. And that's probably when it's going to like almost come up and catch you off guard. And to be like, oh, here's a new thing that kind of annoys me. I wasn't aware this was a thing that this other person does or...
And that there is expectations. The only reason you get frustrated with someone else, the only reason you can ever be frustrated at someone else, even if they do something like they slap you in the face, the only way you'd ever get frustrated with that is if you had an expectation that that wasn't going to happen. That sounds like a very normal thing that I'm saying. Yeah. But like listen to the power that's involved in that. By letting go of this idea that you can predict everything and I know exactly what the other person should do and they should do everything I want all the time and they should meet my expectations. If you can let go of that, and again, we're not talking about big deal breaker stuff like they cheat on you or they punch you or something like that, fine. But with the smaller stuff, if you can let go of the expectations of like, they should put the dishes away. She should care about this. He should care about this thing that I care about. She shouldn't do that. He should spend time with me. She should want to spend time with me. If you can let go of the stuff, like those expectations or those stories that you tell yourself, it's a hell of a lot more peaceful to be in a relationship. It really is. Because the other person is always, you can trust them to always do what they want to do. People are inherently selfish, and I mean that in a good way. You little fidgeter.
You fidget as well.
I know, I fidget too. I do fidget. But yeah, people are always going to do what they want to do.
Yeah, and when you go in with that expectation, you're never surprised.
Yeah, the expectation that they'll do whatever they want to do. Yeah, and again, we're not talking about deal breaker stuff like they hit you or they cheat on you or whatever your deal breakers are. But yeah, with the little stuff, people are going to surprise you. They're not going to behave the way you want them to. That's a good thing. Because it means they're doing what they want to do. And if they didn't do that, if they did everything you wanted all the time, they wouldn't be a person. They'd be a doormat.
It'd be pretty boring. It'd kind of just be like...
It'd be weird. It'd mean they can read your mind and know what you want. Because that's the other thing. A lot of the time when we're disappointed or frustrated with someone, we didn't tell them what we wanted. We just got mad that they didn't automatically know exactly what we wanted.
Correct.
And it's like, well, they can't fucking win, can they? So, yeah, there will be this stuff that comes up in a relationship where you don't like the other person or you're mad, but realize that that's your own shit. A really good book on this is Loving What Is by Byron Katie. Another really good one is I Need Your Love, Is That True by Byron Katie. And a third really good one is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Whole point of this book is to take responsibility for everything. And if your partner pisses you off, hey, fucking good. Take responsibility for that. That's you. That's you. You can do something about it. You can talk through it. You can work through it. You can figure out what to do. You can practice your stoicism. You can learn to be more peaceful. You can use it as a chance to communicate. This is something that we've done a lot. If you don't feel you're good at communicating because you feel like you're too angry, or you feel like you can't get the words out, or you feel like you're just going to kind of butt heads if you get the words out, write it down on a piece of paper, like journal it. And having it on paper, it somehow seems more rational when you then bring it to the other person. You can say, look, I'm really calm right now. You can see that I'm calm. Read this in your own time. You don't even have to read this with me here if you think that'll make you mad. But like, here's my thoughts. And they can write back to you if they want to. So I think especially in the first couple of years, we really weren't perfect with any of this stuff. We're not perfect now. We've come a hell of a long way there. But we really weren't perfect with a lot of this stuff of like, how to handle when you're mad at the other person, or how to handle when you don't like the other person. I think one thing that we did our best with, we were not always perfect with this. I definitely wasn't perfect with this, neither were you. We tried to never say something in anger that we knew we would regret later. And I think sometimes you're on the edge of, saying that thing that you want to say, and then you go, am I just going to say sorry if I say this tomorrow? Do I just have to say sorry for this? Am I going to regret this? And you'd want to say it, and you'd be like, oh, fuck, okay, I won't say it.
It's almost like a gift to your future self.
Yeah.
Because then it's going to feel terrible having said something hurtful that you don't actually mean, just with the intention of hurting the other person. And it's like, no, you can almost remove the other person, be like, it's not about them, it's about me. I don't want to feel terrible in 24 hours time, so I'm not going to do that.
And you're giving yourself, your future self, and the other person, obviously, a gift by not saying something that you'll regret, because you're making it easier to then, the next time, say something kind. Like, if you practiced kindness, and sometimes kindness is literally just saying, like, look, I need space. I'm going to go for a walk. Like, that's not super kind, but it's as kind as you can possibly be in that moment. Practicing that kindness makes it easier, and kindness was definitely difficult for us in the first couple of years. It really was. Lockdowns definitely in 2020, disrupted that again. So I'd say we've been kind for the last probably 2 years. But that took us like 2 or 3 years to get decent at. It really did. And we were pretty kind to each other. But there are lots of times that we were doing our best. But times where it's like we were not as kind as we are now. Now we're just like ridiculously kind, probably 99.999% of the time. So it's the most unkind thing we'll say now is like, I'm believing a lot of my own stories. Can you help me with that? Yes. Like, that's about the most grumpy that we'll get now. Or like, honey, I'm sorry that I'm being grumpy, but I just don't have much to give. And it's like, that's okay. Like, that's about the biggest, grumpiest thing we'll do. But I think giving yourself permission to suck with that, with everything that we talk about, especially with relationships. And the cheat code is giving your partner permission to suck too.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we say, okay, I know that I'm human and I can give myself permission to suck, but they should be perfect. They shouldn't piss me off, especially when you're actually angry. You can be a bit irrational. Not you personally, I'm just saying people in general can be a bit irrational. And it's like, wait. I'm supposed to give them permission to suck too. Like, they are a human being. Yeah. And so don't have these expectations of them being perfect.
Yeah. And so, ultimately, as we've kind of been saying, it does really just boil down to, like, you're not always going to like the other person. And when you don't, just do your best to be as kind as possible. And there's obviously ways, like, when you're not liking your partner, to also kind of flip that around. It's not just, like, be neutral or don't do something bad. There's also ways that you can almost re-fall in love with your partner. And something that we practice a lot is gratitude.
Yes.
And I find myself, when I'm focusing on the things that I'm frustrated by or unhappy with, sometimes I'll just go away and write a gratitude list of all of the things that I'm grateful for in our relationship.
I do that too all the time.
Grateful to you for that. Grateful for to you? No, that's incorrect. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Gratitude.
Yeah, I express gratitude or I write it down towards you, and that makes me feel a hell of a lot better, and I can almost return to those feelings of love. Sometimes when I do that exercise. Yeah,
we talked about this on the previous YouTube video that we did, where it was called Love. It was called like Love is Not What You See in the Movies. So go watch that if you guys haven't watched that. But one of the concepts that we talked about, was love is an action. You do love. Like it comes from inside you, and you express it, you do it, you practice it, you nurture it. It's like a flower or a garden that you water every day. And so part of that is when you are in the process of maybe not liking your partner, or you're frustrated, or you're annoyed, or something like that, you're disappointed. Water your damn garden. That's your chance to practice love. That's your chance to fuck off and write a gratitude list. That's your chance to go for a walk and fall back in love with, if not them, fall in love with the rest of the world. It's your chance to go spend time with your friends.
And I was going to say, and I find that actually really helps sometimes when I'm not in the happiest mood when it comes to the relationship. Just doing things that make me feel good and lift up my mood generally, then it just seems to improve every other aspect of my life. And then all of a sudden I'm not so frustrated by this thing that you might be doing.
Because what do people do in relationships, right? They'll go, this is how it often plays out. They'll say, I'm unhappy right now, whether that's anger, disappointment, frustration, dislike, whatever it might be. I'm unhappy right now. Therefore, there's a problem with the relationship. It's like, no, you're just unhappy. Go fix that. The fuck has that got to do with the relationship? And people will, in their unhappiness, project that onto the relationship and say, I'm not happy right now. I'm miserable. I'm unhappy. I'm grumpy. I'm sad. I'm disappointed. Whatever it is. Therefore, the relationship's not going the way it should be. It's like the relationship's going just fine. You're fucking unhappy. Fix that. That is an internal state. Sometimes it has something to do with the relationship. A lot of the time it doesn't. A lot of the time it's your unhappiness that you're then shoving onto the relationship. And people do that with everything. We do that with everything. They'll go like, my job sucks. And it's like, does it really? Or are you just like deeply unhappy and going through a midlife crisis? My friends, they don't give any value to my life. It's like, are you giving them any value? Or are you just expecting that they do it all? And it's not always the case, but a lot of the time we project our internal state onto something else.
And I think a test that helps me determine whether I'm just being emotional in this period of time, or it's always been the case, is, did I feel this way about this person or in this situation 2-3 months ago? Are there times when this exact same thing happened and I didn't feel this way? And then like, was there anything that was objectively different, or do I just feel that it's worse now all of a sudden? Do I just feel like something's wrong?
Yeah, because our feelings aren't always a decent compass of what's like real. So sometimes you'll be in the moment and you'll be really frustrated and angry or something like that, and then you take that step back, like you say, and you go, did I feel like this a couple months ago? No. Oh, okay, I'm probably just fucking grumpy. You can also get pretty self-aware, and it takes practice, but you can get pretty self-aware with the rest of your life and say, okay, I haven't been sleeping well the last couple of nights. I haven't maybe gone to the gym for a couple of days. I haven't seen my friends in a little while. I haven't been doing some of the stuff that makes me happy. Maybe it's not the relationship or the other person that's annoying me. Maybe I'm just kind of grumpy because I haven't been doing the things that make me happy. So there's a lot of that stuff that goes on. And you won't be perfect, or you don't need to be perfect, guys and girls. We're not perfect. We certainly were not perfect in the first couple of years, not even remotely. We did our best. I think that was one of the philosophies that really got us through. There's a lot of philosophies that will get you through some of the tough times, and lockdowns were a fucking tough time for us. They really were.
I think something else that has helped me is kind of the mantra of like, this too shall pass. Like, this will pass.
This too shall pass, yeah.
This won't last forever. Like the shit feelings, if I just keep going and do the things that I know will make me feel better, eventually, it'll pass. It won't always feel like this.
So let's be clear, take action and it will pass.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or And sometimes even the action is like letting go, but take some sort of action.
And often that in itself can alleviate a lot of the feelings of stress, or at least for me at the start, because it was almost like I was making the situation worse by perpetuating the negative feelings, because I was getting worried and anxious about the way that I was feeling.
This sad? Is this something wrong? Yeah.
And then I was looking for evidence as to why I might be feeling bad. But when I kind of just took a deep breath and said, it's all right, I will eventually feel better, that almost solved the problem by removing all of the anxieties around the situation.
Yeah. Again, taking action. Let's make that really clear.
Yes.
Don't just sit there and go, I'll feel better. It's like you'll probably slip into depression if you do nothing to make yourself feel better. So, yeah, taking that action. But, yeah, for sure. And some of the philosophies that definitely got us through at the start were, and we're going to do videos on each one of these, but this was the first one. This was the very first one. You know, you're not always going to like your partner. Another one was, and we didn't learn this till quite late in the relationship, but everybody's just trying to do their best. I'm trying to do my best, you're trying to do your best. The other person isn't the enemy. So I guess that is a philosophy that we had really early on. You're both on the same team. Like, this is my partner, especially when you're in the middle of an argument or you're annoyed at the person or you're frustrated. In those moments, remind yourself, like, wait, this is my teammate. Like, we agreed to be on the same team. Right now, my brain is telling me stories, or my ego is telling me stories that they're the enemy. No, they're fucking not. They're on my team. Even if right now what they're saying isn't kind to me, because sometimes in the heat of an argument, the other person might not be super kind. But just reminding yourself, they're on my team. They're just emotional. They're going through something. Just because they're going through something doesn't mean I have to pull down into their level and, you know, be like two pigs in the mud wrestling. I can just remain stoic and say, okay, you're grumpy right now. I understand. That's okay. I get grumpy too sometimes. You are my teammate. Right now, you don't think I'm your teammate, but this will pass, and then you'll remember that we're teammates. So, yeah, that stuff happens a lot. But another philosophy that really helps is when you're in the middle of disliking the other person, it's not what they did that you dislike, it's the stories that you tell about what they did. Nobody can ever disappoint me. I tell a story of how they disappointed me, and I disappoint myself. That's the basic foundation of Stoicism. It's also everything that Byron Katie talks about. Lots of other people talk about that same sort of shit. Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership, that's his freaking book. It's not the other person's fault for pissing you off. Like, it's your fault. Take responsibility. Fix it. Do something about it. It has nothing to do with the other person.
And this is an idea that I love applying to like so many different areas of like, once you remove all of the shoulds and like this should be different,
the expectations,
they shouldn't be doing that. It's just like a very neutral situation. Like, I don't know, I guess an example of that would be if your partner, you were thinking they should dress better, and you have the thoughts of like, they're a slob, they should dress better, they should respect themselves, they should care about how they're presenting themselves as my partner and what that says about me. But when you remove all of that bullshit, you can just see like, man is standing there, he dresses in tracksuit pants and a shirt with holes in them, shoes with holes in them. Like, there's nothing there.
He's just wearing his clothes that he likes to wear.
Correct.
Yeah. And then at that point, when you take away the stories and you take away the pain and you take away the frustration, a lot of the times you just go, you know what, whatever, that's how he dresses, I don't care. Or if it is something you really genuinely care about, you have a calm, rational, loving conversation where you say, hey, like, I think you could dress better. It's something that would mean a lot to me. Do you think you could give that to me? And sometimes the partner goes, yeah, I can do that. Sure. If that means a lot to you, I'd love to give that to you. Because you're not coming at it from this like passive aggressive, naggy or combative, like, why do you dress like that? You're just saying that, hey, look, you know, do you think you could dress better? It's something that would mean a lot to me. It's important. And sometimes they will say no. And then you can either say, okay, that's fine, I'll put up with it. Or you can say, you know what? No, like, this isn't what I want from a partner. I'm going to, with a clear head and a clear conscience, because I know I tried my best and I was honest, I'm going to leave. Yeah. And you don't do that with an ultimatum or threats or anything. You just say, like, hey, look, like, this is something that's important to me. If you don't think you can give it to me, I completely understand. I wouldn't want you to give something you didn't want to give. That wouldn't be fair. I am going to go, though. If this really is something you can't give, then, you know, I'm going to go. And I think, you know, dressing better is like probably a small example. But for some people, that will be very important because status is important to them, or appearance, or they believe that the way you present yourself says a lot about you as a person, and that will mean a lot to them. Great, brilliant, good. But you do that with like love and, hey, this is what I want. If you can't give that, I'm going to go find someone that can give me that. Rather than like, why are you doing this thing for me? If you loved me, you'd do this for me.
Yeah, the point of it is, or what we're saying and how to address it is so that you're making decisions rationally and without all of the accusation and like combative attitude towards the other person.
Yeah, so it's those stories. On a similar note, this might sound a little esoteric, but some people will understand this, and if you let it marinate in your head, it might get in there. It took me a little while too, but you've never really met the other person that you're in a relationship with. You've only met the stories that you tell about who they are. That might sound esoteric. It's like, what are you talking about? I've met my partner. I've been with them for 10 years. It's like, no, you constantly tell a bunch of stories about them, good and bad stories. You tell stories about how they're ambitious until the 1 month where they take a break, and then you tell stories about how they're lazy. You tell stories about how they're stoic or they're masculine or they're this or they're that. And then sometimes you'll tell stories of how they're not those things, or they're lazy or they're ambitious or they're this. You're telling a bunch of stories. We don't actually ever, I guess a way of saying it is, stories are the way that we integrate information about the world. Stories are the way that we, to ourselves, describe what we're seeing. You tell a story.
Yeah, I think the way that I personally understand what you're saying is that everyone and everything that we see through the lens of our own projections. So I might look at you and see one thing, and then the next person might look at you and see something completely different.
Yeah.
And there is no correct or objective reality. Everyone just sees things their own way because of all of their own thoughts.
Yeah, you filter everything. It's like someone might see me and go like, oh, honest, loving, kind person who's in an open relationship with his girlfriend who he adores. Someone else might see me and be like, fuck boy.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just because you viewed it through your own lens. And like, we're all constantly doing that. That's kind of the point that I'm making here. And so I guess your way of phrasing it is quite a good way of phrasing it. It's like, we don't ever just say like, here's the objective, or very few people say, here's the objective person in front of me. Woman in blue dress with hair tied up, wearing lip gloss. Like, you never say that. Almost no one says that. You can get to a point where you do say that, and that's just called being neutral. That's neutrality. And that's actually quite a healthy, if you can get to that place rather than being judgmental or telling negative stories, that's life-changing. That really is. If you can just go around the world just saying what things are. Oh, it's raining. Oh, that guy cut me off in traffic. Oh, my boss gets grumpy sometimes. If you can just say it, but without the extra stories of, that's bad. My boss shouldn't get grumpy. My boss is an asshole. It's like, he's not an asshole. You made that up. Your boss raised his voice a couple of decibels when he talked to you. That's the objective truth. If you can get to that point where you're just neutral, it's almost like pure autism. If you can just have autism and literally say things exactly how they are, fucking great. Like, that brings you so much peace in itself. Autism does bring you peace in this context, in the way that I'm using the phrase autism.
Okay.
So, yeah, the point that I'm making is, generally speaking, we haven't really ever met the other person. You meet aspects of them, and then you tell a bunch of stories. You meet them, and then you tell a bunch of stories. And you constantly filter them through that lens of all of your stories. It's like, think about what, if we really don't like someone, we will often hear evidence to the contrary and then go like, no, it doesn't count. He's still an asshole. And it's like, so you're not even listening. You're meeting your stories about that person. All you've met is your stories about that person. Or you meet, someone who you think is just a wonderful human being. They can do no wrong. They'll do some wrong. Or they'll do something to hurt other people or something. And then you go, yeah, but it's okay, but blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, you'll justify it.
Yeah, you tell the story of how, no, he's a good person. Like, nothing he could do would be bad. No, he's like a wonderful human being. So we do tend to tell stories a lot. This girl's sexy. It's like someone else might come along and say she's not. She's not objectively sexy. This guy's attractive. Is he? You think he's attractive. So we're constantly telling stories, and that's not a good or a bad thing. It's literally the way that humans categorize the world. It's the way we explain things. It's the way, like, I don't know that there's any way to do it other than to tell stories.
Correct.
I don't know any other way. So it's like, that's just what we do. We tell stories. I tell stories all the time. Here's a story that I tell all the time. And I say it as if it's subjective truth, but it's a story. Being positive is better than being negative. That's a story I tell. I just made that fucking story up. So there's a bunch of stories. And you have control over the stories that you tell, which is, I guess, where this conversation is going. So when you tell stories of someone, tell stories that serve you. And if you're telling a story of like, this person's super ambitious and they're a great person, but then their actions don't line up with that story. In other words, if they disappoint you, be okay with that. Just go like, okay, well, maybe they're still ambitious, but I just have to redefine ambitious. Or maybe they're ambitious, but just not this week. Or maybe I had put them up on a pedestal and they didn't match up. That's okay. They're just a human being. Again, we're not talking about big deal breaker stuff, but for the little stuff, yeah. Be aware, or be a little bit more aware of the stories that you're telling about the other person. And those stories are going on in your head. She's so pretty, that's a story. He's so handsome, that's a story. Man, she's kind of rude to waiters, that's a story. Man, she's never really free when I want her to be, that's a story. Man, she leaves the kitchen messy, that's a story. Man, he's really aggressive when he's angry, that's a story. Like, they're all sort of stories, and if you can be aware of those stories and let some of them go, which is a process, there's lots of books on this. I'll leave some links in the description to some of the books, but if you can let go of those stories, it's a lot more peaceful.
Yeah, and often it can help resolve the situation of when you don't always like your partner.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's because of the stories that I'm telling. This is my, I don't like using the word fault, but this is my response. This is my doing. This happened because of the stories, and I didn't consciously choose those stories. They just happened. But this is me, so I'm going to take extreme ownership of it and maybe write some different stories or question the stories or be okay with them not lining up with my stories. And again, sometimes it will be like a big deal breaker thing where they really didn't match up to a story and you're like, no, this is something that's super important to me. Like, I want this story. This is like a boundary for me. Okay, that's fine. That happens sometimes. Then you figure out what you want to do. You break up or you take some space or whatever it is that you want to do. But yeah, being aware of some of those stories. So books that help with this is Loving What Is, I Need Your Love, Is That True? Both of those by Byron Katie, plus Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink is pretty good. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover is also probably useful with this stuff. When I Say No, I Feel Guilty is useful. Any books on assertiveness, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. But yeah, any of those books will help with this kind of stuff. Anything else you want to say? Any final shout-outs?
Shout out to your mum for giving good advice.
My mum gives great advice. We're going to do multiple podcasts on this. My mother has given me a lot of great advice over the years for relationships. We're going to go through every single one and we're going to add some of our own advice, like stuff that we've figured out along the way too. And we're going to nail a bunch of these different relationship podcasts because they're fun. They're really fun. And we'll keep doing more. If any of you have questions about relationships or sex or dating or any other topic, let us know, leave a comment, and we will happily do a video if we like your comment. And if you have a cool username. What do we do with people that don't have cool usernames? Bin them. Delete them. I delete them from YouTube. I literally contact Google and I'm like, yo, you need to shut this motherfucker's account down. This is bullshit. This guy's called
John Smith.
John Smith 42. It's like, get fucked, John Smith 42. Get fucked. I had a coaching client, John Smith, remember? And then you might say oh, you've just doxed one of your coaching clients. Fuck off. No, I haven't. John Smith was his literal legal name. He's going to know who I'm talking about too. John Smith. Whoa. He had a nickname too, because it's my name is bullshit. My parents are fucked up for giving me this name.
I know.
They're sick fucks. He didn't say that. I'm saying that.
At university whose name was John Smith.
Yeah, why are you going to call your kid John Smith? That's fucked. It's like, imagine your last name is Doe and you're like, right, we got to call our daughter Jane. It's like, why have you done that? Do you literally hate children? That right up there is, you know how serial killers, a lot of serial killers will start by injuring animals? They call it crushing, I believe.
Do they?
Yeah. You know how they start by injuring animals? That's a common thing.
Yeah.
Calling your kid Jane Doe is the equivalent of that. Or John Smith is that's crushing it, but like choking a baby puppy.
Sure, it's a gateway to serial killing.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I'm sure John Smith
I think some people
his
just
parents
don't have much foresight when it comes to naming children.
All right, so we'll wrap up.
Yep.
If you want coaching, I'll be more serious on the coaching than I was in this podcast.
Is that
I
true?
Promise. Yeah, I'm very serious in the coaching. I don't make too many jokes. I make jokes in the group coaching calls. Yes. Okay, so you want to know my favorite joke? I don't know if you know.
I know a
Mag.
lot of your favorite jokes.
No, but you might not know the favorite jokes because you're not there on the coaching calls, obviously.
Correct.
So anytime a guy comes in and he's like, he's big smile on his face and he's like, hey, guess what? You know that girl that I went on a date? Sorry, start again. So he will come with a big smile on his face and he'll say, hey, you know, I went on a date and I had sex. It was so much fun. And then my joke is always, do you know my joke? When they say I went on a date and I had sex, I'll always say, what was his name? And then they go, her name was blah, blah. And I've said that joke like literally hundreds of times at this point.
Yeah.
To one guy in particular, especially, he keeps lining it up for me. And I'm like, what was his name? And he's like, oh, very funny. Like, very funny.
Your clients will get a taste of what it's like being in a relationship with you. And like,
my jokes are sick as fuck, son.
You line up the same jokes again and again.
I do. Ask the girl that we're dating.
What?
She's probably listening to this. She said, no, yeah, the other day, she said that I have, like, dad jokes.
You do have dad jokes.
Little bitch. She's...
Not nice.
She's going to listen to this. All right, so coaching, I will leave links in the description below. I'm still offering those 1 hour coaching calls if you want one of those.
Mm-hmm. They're now $1,000.
I put the price up multiple fucking times on those. Remember when they started at $150?
I know. Good job if anybody got in there with those.
Yeah, a bunch of people started at the start, and then we just got flooded, and I was like, yo, there's too many of these. Price got to go up. Group coaching, we got that as well. 12 weeks of group coaching. We got 6 months. If you want me, you want the hardcore VIP coaching, you get to work with me for 6 months. Oh my fucking God, that's an insane amount of time, an insane amount of value. I will tell you a lot of dad jokes in that time. I'll change your life too. I'll get you peace, happiness, and enlightenment, which is, funnily enough, the thing that I'm working on with most people at this point. It really does seem to be that.
Yeah, and I think that's just a matter of what you're doing rubbing off on other people, because people come to you and be like, I want to get laid. And then
I'm like, cool, that's easy. That'll take 6 weeks, and then we spend the next 4 months working on your peace and happiness and your meaning of life and what the fuck do you want from life.
Yeah, and you almost, I think it's probably also a fact that like you're seeing you and then other people in the group kind of talking about this stuff and you're like, oh, this seems more interesting.
Yeah. It's like if I want to get laid, I can just go do that. That's not that hard. Like I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, like tell the audience that like, oh, you need me as a coach to get laid. It's like, I'll help for sure. I'll get you a goal, but it's like getting laid is just getting laid.
Yeah, and I think when you have that like peace and contentment with life, all of the things that you want kind of just happen. They feel a lot more effortless. It doesn't feel like this struggle or grind to reach your goals.
Yeah, the headspace stuff, the mental game stuff really, really, really does help in life. If you can just be happy, positive, and you like your life and you like yourself and you like the people around you and you feel somewhat connected to other people and the universe and all of that hippy-dippy spiritual stuff that sounds really good and is really good. Yeah, life kind of just flows, doesn't it? It's like at this point, like the clients of mine that I work on with this, or the clients of mine that embrace this stuff, it's like they're not putting in any effort to meet women. Like they're putting in effort, to be clear, but it's like women just want to be around them because their headspace is positive and it's easy. They can go out and talk to a bunch of women and not worry if one rejects them or doesn't want to date them. Making money is just a process of like, hey, what do I have to offer? Let me offer that to people. Some of them will give me money. There's not that like friction. There's less friction when you work on the mental headspace side of stuff. So that's something I'm very passionate about. It's funny that we started out by me telling everyone, as in random strangers that we would meet, when they would ask, what do you do? At the very start of the coaching several years ago, I was hesitant and nervous to say, oh, I'm a sex and dating coach. So I would just say, I'm a life coach. Like that was just the polite thing that I would say. And then I fully embraced like, no, I'm just going to tell the truth. So I tell people I'm a sex and dating coach. And now we've come like full circle. Now, I swear to God, like most of what I care about, at least when I work with clients, is, life coach. So we've come full circle. I am actually a life coach now. I get to call myself a life coach. What do these people need to do?
Is the outro still the same?
You can do a different outro if you want.
I don't have a different outro.
Do a different outro.
You should send a nice text to your mother. And if your mother's dead, send a nice text to your friend or family member.
Why are you telling these people what they have to do? I don't like the word should. That's fucked.
If
See,
you
now we're in that spot, just like the podcast.
Well, you were
I won't
saying,
always like the other person.
to go out there and crush
like
your
you very
goals. That's
much right
also
now.
a command.
No, I'm saying if Fuck you. I love you.
I love you too.